Okay, I'm going to try to cover paging in a Azure graph. Let me just bring up the documentation there. Okay, AZ graph query. I wanted to cover paging because I've used the graph query in quite a number of other scripts, and paging is useful in a lot of scenarios, but the most notable one is obviously when the sheer number of resources returned by the graph query exceeds what you will get by default. If we look at the AZ graph query command, there's this option for first. Now, it basically gives the maximum number of objects to return and accepts to 1 to 1000. Now, one thing I'm not clear on, and I don't think is clear in this document, or I've not seen it, is what the maximum number of objects the command will return if you omit that. So if I don't have a hyphen first and I just ask for a query and it has more than 1000 records, will it limit it to 1000 records anyway? I would assume so, but I've heard of other values like 3000 and 5000 before. Okay, so there's a bit of background noise there. That's just my daughter playing drums, so sorry about that. So let's go ahead and try and use this in a script. So I'm going to run a very simple resource graph query. Let me just get signed in. And in fact, I'm just going to ask for resources full stop. Let's see how many we've got there. So I've got 76 resources. Okay. So how can we filter this down? I don't know. I do want to filter this down. Let's leave it as it is. Maybe we go for the central US location. Maybe that's a good one. So where location equals central US. Okay, that's now my query, and I've got 47 results. So how would we execute that same query in PowerShell? First, I would store that as a string. Just clean that up. I would get my query result by running AZ graph query, where my query object is going to be query. Let's make sure I'm doing that correct by the documentation. -- graph query. Okay, and then I would convert from JSON. Okay. Now there's a couple of things that's going to come back in this object, which is specifically related to the paging and the results. So I'm going to write them out. We're going to have the query result dot count. So this is how many records there are in the data set returned. Then there'll be a total count, which is going to be total number of records across the entire query. There is something called a skip token, and then there's the actual data itself. So that will be an array of objects. And then just to show that that works, let's go into the first object and let's pull out its name. Okay, let me see if that even works. First off, I need to do an AZ login. Okay, now logged in. Okay, so now let's run this PowerShell. Okay, so it's giving me, there's 47 records in this query result. There's 47 total records in the entire query. And oh, I've got them wrong there. I've got this count must be wrong. Let me just do that again and see which part of that I'm bringing in incorrect. No, dot count is correct. Query result dot count, query result total count, query result skip token, should be empty. The data.length is 47, and data0.name gives me the first record there. So if I was to do 5, let's run that again. Oops. Okay, 47, LVM1. Okay, one of these is not returning correctly. I think it might be that. Showing weakness with PowerShell here. Let's take that out. Okay. So I think it might be the total count. Is it total records? Yes, it is. So how about make the whole thing a lot easier? Let's say count. This is going to be our page count. This is going to be our total count, skip token, and the first record. Well, it's not the first record in this case. Now it's the first record name. And we don't really need to print out the whole object now. Okay, page count 47, total count 47. And there is no skip token. So if I now go in and let's make this a first 10. Let's run that again. We've got a page count of 10, a total count of 47, and then we've got this skip token in here. Now, I could use just the count of records and put this in a loop where I then know that, you know, I've already got the first 10. I could go in and then say skip another 10, and that would give me the next set of results, if you will, the next page of results. You can see I've got a different resource name there, but the skip token is really there to allow me to do that. So let's build a quick do while loop. Okay, I'm going to pull out just this portion. Okay, we're going to assign that skip token to this value here. Okay, and then let's start by initializing that. Skip token equals null. And then this goes against all my coding desires, logic, history. This is something I don't like about PowerShell. I'm sure there's better ways to do it, but let's do a if skip token, and I've got to do it backwards as well, which is even worse. If skip token equals null, then we're going to run our first query. We are not going to include a skip there. And then what we're going to say is, well, hang on, if skip token isn't null, then instead of doing first 10, we're literally just going to do skip token and pass in that value. Now, the bit I don't like about this is, I guess I could do this to make myself feel better. We can set that equal to null. This, you know, this would work anyway if I didn't initialize that variable, which from a scoping perspective drives me crazy, but I accept it. It should work. So let's see what's going to happen now. We are going to come in first time with no skip token. So we're going to run a query to get the first 10. We're then going to pull out whatever the skip token is from that result. We're then going to output what that result actually was. The while condition is going to be while the skip token, again, while this time does not equal null, then it's going to continue. Let's give that a go. Okay, so we've iterated through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, which makes sense. And the last page only has 7 records to give us our total of 47. Now, a couple of words of caution from having used the graph query. I did originally use the skip number, and I would actually provide a number in here. So I would track how many records were being returned, and I would have a counter, record counter value here, and I would increment that each time I got new results. So my record counter would add in the current page number of records. And then in this, instead of skip token, this would be my record counter. And so you can imagine how that would work. So one of the problems with that is if you do any kind of processing here, that takes time. Well, in the time that you've been processing the records, maybe it's a list of VMs and you go and execute a command against those VMs, the actual results to this query may have changed. Maybe someone's provisioned a new virtual machine in that time. Maybe someone's decommissioned a virtual machine in that time. If you're using paging, odds are there's a lot of resources, so there's a lot of activity going on. So in that scenario, your results can become inconsistent when you then go and query again and tell it just to skip a number of records. We do the first page of 10, we come back in, we say skip the first 10 because we've already had them. Well, what if one of those machines was shut down now? And not deleted, because I don't have a power setting here in the query, but it was deleted. Then your record 9 now becomes record 8, your record 10 becomes record 9, your record 11 becomes record 10, and there's a cascade effect there where you can basically miss records. So there's actually 2 elements to this bit. The first thing is to make sure you use an order by. Even if you just order by the resource ID, you want to make sure that from one iteration to the next, this graph query is going to try and return the same order of records. Otherwise, again, it can be inconsistent. One of the benefits of using the skip token instead of managing the counter yourself is that it will preserve ordering even if you don't have an order in there. It's like a continuation token. So it's going to remember or be able to relate to the original results set and give you the next page of results. So you don't need to ensure every time you call that the order is consistent. It will be by the very nature of you using a skip token. The other thing I guess I would hope, but I do not know, is to make sure that the skip token is going to return all results to you. So let's say when I first kick this off, maybe there's 100 virtual machines, and by the time I get to processing the 100th virtual machine, maybe 3 more have been added. I would hope that skip token, when I next go and use it, recognizes there's more machines there, and it would include those additional VM records, if you will. It will keep providing me with that token until I've exhausted the complete set. Now, I don't know that the skip token does actually do that. It would be great if it did. But what we're running into here is really just kind of an issue of consistency of that query result set from when I first run it to as I iterate through each page. Now, the other bit of advice I'd give if you've got processing that takes time here is don't process here. Instead, just collect data. Collect data for processing. So what do I mean? Well, let's not waste any time. Let's process the results page by page. Let's store them in a local object that extracts out all the information that we actually need about these virtual machines or whatever other resources we're querying. And then after that, do the processing here. So that way we're done with the paging against the graph query and we have a fixed scope from our results. Now, as we go through and process them, we still have the same challenge that maybe some of those resources have changed state, or they've been deleted, or they've been powered off. So as you do the processing resource by resource, you're still probably going to need to do some current state checks against them. But in generally I find that's less painful than actually trying to handle the inconsistencies if you have a slow process within the paging loop. I hope that makes sense. If you're dealing with large volumes of Azure resources and you like to script against, large volumes of them, then hopefully this makes sense, and hopefully this adds a little bit of insight to avoiding trouble down the road. Good luck.